If you're thinking of buying a new home, the question you'll be asking yourself is whether you should be buying a house or a flat. On one hand, buying a house gives long-term stability and gives you the flexibility to make changes to the property according to your requirements and taste without seeking the prior consent beyond the council, and like a flat, has the potential to increase in value over time. On the flip side, you may think buying a flat is a better option because that's what's trending, easier to maintain, and at first glance appears cheaper and easier to take the first step onto the property ladder. In this video, we discuss whether you'll be financially better or worse off when buying a house or flat, the decisive factors that you will need to consider before buying, and crucially, the non-financial reasons that you will need to weigh up before you buy a property for yourself or as part of your investment portfolio. Lastly, I will leave you with one piece of final advice that is often overlooked that will make your property more desirable and help it stand out compared to others in the marketplace. If you're new here, I'm Manish, a former investment banker with nearly a decade of experience. I also hold a degree in business and finance from a top London Russell Group university. This video will be the first in a series of videos that will help you better navigate the property and real estate landscape, whether that be for your dream home or if you're thinking about an investment property, making your next move the right move. Let's start with the basics and how are they different. You would look to purchase a house referred to as a freehold if you wanted complete ownership of the building and the land it is built on. You will retain full authority and control to change or sell the property without the need to seek prior consent. However, as the owner, you will also be fully responsible for paying any debt secured on the property and self-fund any ongoing repairs and maintenance. In contrast, with interest rates having risen over the last few years, you may prioritize a higher disposable income at the end of the month while still benefiting from term ownership, in which case flats, often smaller in size, are cheaper to purchase. Furthermore, in a world where we are ever increasingly being squeezed for time, flats offer peace of mind when it comes to maintenance issues because they are managed by the owner of the building where the flat is situated. Freehold and leasehold are the most common and significant type of property ownership, which will be the focus of this video. However, there is a hybrid option called share of freehold, which gives the owner or leaseholder of the flat alongside other leaseholders of the remaining flats in the building additional ownership of the physical land, the building that the flat sits within. Now let's look at the key questions to ask when buying a property for investment purposes, and your main goal here is to make a profit from selling it at some point in the future. Buying a flat is usually the first step that people take when buying a property for investment purposes, but there are exceptions to the rule, whereby houses are a better fit for their financial goals. The return on investment, or ROI, which is a simple calculation that looks at how much a property costs and how much money you make from it. How much money you make on a property will depend on two main income streams. One, money earned from selling the property for more than what you purchased it for. This is called capital appreciation. And two, ongoing rental payments known as annuity due income, but often it's a mixture of the two. Flats are usually cheaper and therefore easier to sell or rent. The profit you make from rental payments may appear higher at first glance, but after taking into account ground rent and ongoing service charges and other exceptional costs, that may not be the case. There are two main types of costs when buying a flat. The first main cost is ground rent. Remember, leaseholders own the flat for a set period of time, but the freeholder owns the building and the grounds the flat is built on. This means if you're the leaseholder, you will have to pay ground rent every month for the right to occupy the land the flat is built on. This can be upwards of £500 a year in London, but this will all depend on various factors such as proximity to the centre of town and the size of the flat. Depending on your lease contract, this amount will increase every 10 to 15 years, and it's important to negotiate these terms as the cost can add up in the background. The second cost is the service charge, which covers the upkeep and maintenance of the exterior building and its shared areas such as the garden. If you own your own home, you are responsible for all the maintenance such as repairs to a leaking roof or the upkeep of the garden. But the overarching benefit of this is that you will be able to reach out to contractors at your convenience and be able to negotiate the best rate or even postpone repairs to when it's more financially viable for you to carry out those repairs. The main point here being is that you will have full control over that process. With a flat, you are responsible for the inside of that flat, but areas such as the corridors, the elevator, lobby, parking, and even the gardens are shared, and when those areas require maintenance, the freeholder is obligated to pay for these upfront and carry out the repairs as soon as possible because it affects all the leaseholders of the different flats in the building. Because of this, the freeholder does not have the luxury of time to wait for the best contractor and often pays inflated prices, and combined with the extent and scale of the repairs for a large building and its surrounding grounds can be upwards of tens of thousands of pounds, which can be very expensive even when the costs are shared amongst the different leaseholders. These costs also typically go up and down depending on the actual costs incurred. However, if time is a commodity, this structure could free you up to focus on other investment opportunities beyond property, such as the stock market, that have the potential for a greater return. These are the two main hidden costs, and it's important to budget and forecast for these when looking to buy for yourself or as an investment property, and importantly assess whether it's aligned to your financial goals from a return on investment perspective. Where flats can be cheaper initially, it may make more sense to buy a house because you have full control of how and when you do repairs. The next thing to take into account is the ownership period. With a freehold house, you own that house forever until you sell it. This means you can live in the safety and comfort that at no point does the term of ownership need to be renegotiated. In contrast, with a leasehold property, you only own it for a specified period of time. This can be anywhere from 100 years all the way through to 999 years. With the most important thing to consider here is the amount of years left on the lease being closely linked to its present day value. A property with a shorter lease, typically 70 to 85 years for example, is considered a diminishing asset because the value declines over time. It will reduce the value of the property now if you sell, because it's harder for potential buyers to get a mortgage, because it exposes the bank to greater risk that they won't be able to recoup their loan if they have to repossess and sell the property in the future. To mitigate this risk, you can enter into contract negotiations with the freeholder to extend the lease term, which will cost you a fee and can be very expensive depending on how long you want the extension for and what point in the lease term you are asking for that extension. You could, however, look to purchase a virtual freehold, which is a flat with a 999-year lease. This is not officially a freehold, but from the outer structure affords some of the same benefits to the buyer that long-term ownership from a regular freehold does. The property can be lived in and still be passed down for inheritance purposes without the fear that the lease term is close to expiry. The fourth thing you want to consider is whether you see yourself making home improvements in the future. Whether you buy a house or a flat, it's crucial that the value in the property increases over time for you to make a profit when you sell in the future. The value in the property usually increases when you buy in most major cities like London and New York, but when the economy is struggling, this can result in prices falling or stagnating for some properties in central and outer areas, which can result in you getting the same or worse, less than for what you paid for it in the future. To increase and protect the value of your home, your first thought would be to 1. Increase the size by extending, say, the kitchen, or utilize the space you already have and change the layout of the property by taking down a structural wall, for example, and making it open plan, or partition a wall to make it 3 bedrooms instead of 2. This is all very straightforward when you own a freehold house, when the most you usually need to do is seek permission from the council, which is straightforward and something you can usually do yourself without the need to pay for an architect. This is compared to a leasehold property where there are additional layers of complexity, whereby in addition to seeking permission from the council, you are required to pay a lump sum to the freeholder, which can be multiple people each time you want to make any structural changes, and depending on how well you have negotiated your contract, can extend to cosmetic changes as well. This can be costly and a time-consuming process where you may also need to enlist the help of a solicitor, adding another expense and drain on your time. Other restrictions outlined to the leaseholder is not being able to rent through websites such as Airbnb or Booking.com, which is usually driven by a lack of their own insurance coverage for short-term rentals. This can make you feel disenfranchised from not having full control over the future of your property. This leads us to my final point here, which is the non-financial reasons to consider when buying your next property. If you have a dream home in mind in a certain location such as the countryside or overlooking the coastline, and making money on the property is not as a high of a priority, everything we spoke about should be a secondary consideration, where your primary goal here is to live in a home that you will forever be happy living in. All the options should be on the table here, and even consider renting versus buying, which is another subject altogether and one that will make a future video on, so please stay tuned for that. If you're looking for peace of mind that you have complete ownership and control of a property forever, then a freehold property would be best. On the flip side, if your main concern here is making a profit in the shortest time possible, a flat could be the best option as they are cheaper to buy, but as we discussed, you'll need to factor in ongoing yearly maintenance and service charges. To leave you with one final piece of advice, and one we have not explored, is location. Beyond the deliberations of freehold or leasehold, where the property is situated in terms of proximity, such as being close to good schools, shops and train stations, or even being far away enough from big construction projects like HS2 or even the local refuge site, can make a big difference to local traffic conditions or even the air quality of your local area, which can greatly impact your quality of life. Also, in my experience, I have found homes with a south-facing garden which receive the most sunlight during the day make it great for evening barbecues in the summer, but also boost your mood and energy because of the increased exposure to natural light. This feature will also drive up the value of your property because these properties are in greater demand. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, as it really helps getting this video to the widest possible audience. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you next time and take care.